The morning sun cast a golden glow over the serene waters surrounding Fantasy Island, painting the sky in shades of amber and soft pink. On the wooden pier, Mr. Rourke stood with his usual impeccable posture, his white suit pristine against the tropical backdrop. Beside him was his loyal assistant, Tattoo, who was looking out at the arriving seaplane with wide, curious eyes. Miles, one of the island staff members, hurried over to join them, adjusting his uniform as he walked. Tattoo looked up at his employer, his voice filled with the usual morning enthusiasm as he asked who the new guests were. Mr. Rourke smiled gently, gazing toward the passengers stepping off the plane, and informed Tattoo that the arrivals were Mr. Herbert Soames, his wife, Beatrice, and their daughter, Allison. Tattoo, always keen on understanding the unique desires of the people who visited their shores, immediately wanted to know which one of them held the fantasy. Mr. Rourke explained that Mrs. Soames was the one who officially requested the fantasy, but it was her daughter, Allison, who was actually going to experience it. This statement puzzled the energetic little man, prompting Tattoo to admit that the boss had completely lost him this time. With a patient smile, Mr. Rourke began to elaborate, explaining that Mrs. Soames used to be in the theatre many years ago. Now that she was no longer performing, her greatest dream was for her daughter to pick up where she had left off. Specifically, Mrs. Soames desired for her daughter to perform as the star in a classic operetta. Unfortunately, as Mr. Rourke pointed out, Miss Allison Soames had absolutely no desire to become an actress. To make matters even more complicated, Mr. Soames had a secret fantasy of his own which, if fulfilled, would greatly influence the future happiness of the entire family. Tattoo shook his head, admitting that he was thoroughly confused by the intricate web of family desires. Mr. Rourke simply patted his shoulder and told him to trust him, as everything would unfold exactly as it needed to. Before Tattoo could ask any more questions about the Soames family, his attention was caught by another passenger stepping onto the dock. He nudged Mr. Rourke and asked who the pretty lady was. Mr. Rourke looked toward the elegant woman carrying a sleek briefcase and identified her as Miss Margaret Stanton. He explained that she was an attorney with the prestigious law firm of Peabody, Melton, and Stern. Tattoo immediately grew defensive, wondering aloud if she had come to the island to sue them. Mr. Rourke chuckled softly, reassuring his assistant that no one was suing anyone, least of all Tattoo. In reality, Miss Stanton had been sent to the island by her law firm to personally deliver a massive check to the person holding the winning ticket of the recent Irish sweepstakes. This piece of news instantly sparked Tattoo's curiosity, and he eagerly asked who had won, whose fantasy it was, and if it was anybody he knew. Mr. Rourke looked down at him with a mysterious expression and said that, actually, Tattoo knew the winner very well, as it was Ambrose Hoskins. Tattoo gasped in shock, pointing out that Ambrose had passed away only the previous week. Mr. Rourke nodded slowly, noting that the unfortunate passing of the old man opened the door to a number of very interesting possibilities. As the guests gathered on the manicured lawn, Mr. Rourke stepped forward, spreading his arms in a warm gesture of hospitality. He greeted them warmly, introducing himself as Mr. Rourke, their host, and formally welcomed them all to Fantasy Island. Nearby, the Soames family was already experiencing some internal tension. Allison Soames sighed heavily, complaining to her parents that first it had been piano lessons, then ballet school, followed by charm school, baton twirling, and now this sudden theatrical venture. She made it quite clear that she had no desire to go into show business, especially not to be featured in some silly operetta. She wondered aloud why her mother could not realize that she wanted her own life. Mr. Rourke, walking beside them, offered a piece of gentle wisdom, observing that trying to live their own lives over through their children was a mistake that many well-meaning parents often made. Allison looked at the host, her eyes filled with exhaustion, stating that she could not take this pressure much longer. Mr. Rourke smiled reassuringly and asked her which specific operetta she was going to sing. Allison revealed that the production was called Naughty Marietta. Mr. Rourke, well versed in all forms of art, explained the plot to her, noting that the character Miss Soames would be portraying, Marietta, was a French princess who ran away from an undesirable arranged marriage by joining the famous Casquette Girls. He explained that the Casquette Girls were historic women who traveled to colonial Louisiana, where they were bought by lonely men who were in desperate need of good wives. Mr. Rourke handed a beautifully bound script to the young woman, suggesting that it would be best if she read the play and thoroughly acquainted herself with the plot. Allison looked at the book with a look of pure dread, stating that she had better warn him about something important. When Mr. Rourke asked what it was, she confessed that she could not even carry a tune. Mr. Rourke, completely unfazed, suggested that they could perhaps remedy that minor detail right away. He asked her to sing something for him, anything at all, just a few bars to test her voice. Allison hesitated, but with Mr. Rourke encouraging her to go ahead, she took a deep breath and began to sing the familiar lines of a song about a place somewhere over the rainbow. Her voice started off small, but as she opened her mouth, a magnificent, operatic sound echoed across the gardens. Tattoo, who was watching from a short distance, clapped his hands together excitedly, exclaiming that the boss was absolutely terrific. Allison stopped singing, her hands flying to her mouth in utter disbelief as she asked Mr. Rourke if that beautiful voice had actually come from her. Mr. Rourke smiled with immense satisfaction, confirming that indeed it was her true hidden talent. He then instructed Miss Soames to open the book so they could formally be on their way into the experience. Suddenly, the modern surroundings of the island began to shift and dissolve into a vibrant, historical setting. The sound of a bustling harbor filled the air, and excited shouts echoed through the cobblestone streets. Voices cried out that the boat was in and that the Casquette girls had finally arrived. Mr. Rourke stood beside Allison for one last moment, confirming that they were now in colonial New Orleans in the year 1780. He reminded her that her mother wanted her to play the role of Marietta, and indeed, she would now do so. He urged her to familiarize herself with the book as quickly as possible. Before Allison could fully process the transformation, a rough-looking man in historical garb grabbed her by the arm, shouting to his companions that he would take this beautiful woman as his wife. Allison struggled against his grip, demanding to know what he was doing and telling him to get his hands off her. She cried out for him to put her down, looking frantically around for Mr. Rourke. The host, standing calmly as the scene played out around him, merely reminded her to read the book and find out what page she was on. Meanwhile, back in the elegant main office of the island resort, Mr. Rourke sat across from Miss Margaret Stanton, the sharp and professional attorney. He apologized sincerely for being late, explaining that he had been unavoidably detained by some pressing guest matters. Miss Stanton smiled politely, saying it was of no concern, and suggested that they get straight down to business. Mr. Rourke agreed, gesturing toward the documents on his desk. Miss Stanton opened her briefcase and pulled out an official-looking document, explaining that as Mr. Rourke knew, she had been sent by her firm to present a substantial check to the rightful winner of the Irish sweepstakes, Mr. Ambrose Hoskins. Mr. Rourke confirmed that according to his file, Mr. Hoskins was indeed a retired merchant ship captain who had worked peacefully as the head groundskeeper on Fantasy Island for the past 7 years. Miss Stanton nodded, noting that it was highly unfortunate that Mr. Hoskins had passed away only 1 week ago. However, she revealed that there was another party explicitly named by the late Mr. Hoskins on the winning ticket. Tattoo, who was sitting nearby listening intently, leaned forward with wide eyes, asking the boss who it was and what the person's name was, wondering if it was a secret friend of Ambrose. Miss Stanton looked at the paperwork, explaining that the document simply stated the money should go to Ambrose's best friend, and she was here on behalf of her firm to locate this individual and present them with the check. Mr. Rourke looked thoughtful, admitting that finding the correct person was not going to be an easy task. Tattoo chimed in, trying to explain that Mr. Hoskins was not exactly blessed with a very amiable personality. He had been a grumpy, solitary man during his life. Mr. Rourke agreed, warning Miss Stanton that she may have considerable difficulty locating anyone who truly fit the description of his best friend. Miss Stanton sighed softly, stating that she would be most grateful for any assistance the island staff could provide in solving this mystery. Mr. Rourke assured her they would do everything they could. Turning to his assistant, Mr. Rourke pointed out that since Tattoo was deeply familiar with all the members of the staff as well as most of the local island population, he wanted Tattoo to look into this matter at once, putting him in full charge of the investigation. Tattoo grinned proudly, stating that he would do exactly what the boss said, though he repeated his warning that it would not be an easy mystery to solve. As Tattoo left the office to begin his search, the door flew open and Mrs. Beatrice Soames marched in, looking utterly furious. She declared that the situation was completely ridiculous and that she intended to speak to Mr. Rourke about it immediately. She stated that if he thought for one moment she would tolerate this, he was mistaken. Spotting the host, she stormed over, with her husband Herbert trailing nervously behind her. Mrs. Soames loudly complained that they had just come from the theatre, and there was absolutely no rehearsal going on. She demanded to know how Alison could possibly star in Naughty Marietta if she was not even practicing her lines. Mr. Rourke remained perfectly calm, explaining to the frantic mother that he had sent her daughter back in time so she could experience the true, living story firsthand. Mrs. Soames gasped, asking if he meant that Alison was actually living out the dangerous life of Marietta. When Mr. Rourke confirmed this, Mrs. Soames began to panic, shaking her head repeatedly. Herbert asked his wife if something was wrong, which only agitated her more. She reminded him that when she said she wanted Alison to appear in an operetta, she meant for her to act on a safe stage, not to actually live the perilous plot. Her panic deepened as Mr. Rourke mentioned that Alison was about to encounter Captain Warrington. Herbert asked who that was, and Mrs. Soames impatiently explained that he was the dashing, romantic lead of the operetta. She realized with dread that her daughter was going to meet him and fall hopelessly in love with him. Herbert, ever the optimist, asked what could possibly be wrong with their daughter falling in love with a handsome captain. Mrs. Soames turned to her husband, explaining that Captain Warrington was a fictional fantasy and that there were no real men like him in the actual world. He was designed to be absolutely perfect, and she feared that once Alison's fantasy was over, the girl would return to reality and be utterly disappointed by the average, imperfect, slightly unkempt men of the real world. Herbert conceded that he supposed his wife had a point. Mrs. Soames turned back to Mr. Rourke, demanding that he bring their daughter back to the present day immediately. Mr. Rourke shook his head with genuine regret, stating that he was afraid it was far too late to cancel the experience. However, he offered to do something else for them to help ease their worries. Mrs. Soames demanded that he do it immediately. Mr. Rourke instructed both of them to close their eyes tightly. As they did so, a strange, swirling wind filled the room. Herbert called out to his wife in confusion, realizing that Mr. Rourke was sending them into the fantasy as well. Within moments, the modern office vanished, and the couple found themselves standing in the middle of a bustling, 18th-century colonial town square.